And welcome back. My first guest is Anastasia Karassik, the founder of the Larisa Karassik Foundation. Thanks for being my guest here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor. Thank you.
So, we're delighted to have you on the program, and maybe for the benefit of our viewers and our residents that will be seeing this, you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe a little bit about yourself and your family.
Sure. I was born and raised in Piermont, New York. I graduated from Tappan Zee High School and then continued on to St. Thomas Aquinas. So I'm a real Rockland local. Mm-hmm. My husband and I got married almost 18 years ago, and we moved to New City, New York. Clarkstown has been a wonderful place for us to live, and they have been an enormous help through the tragedy that our family had endured.
Right. Tell me just a little bit, I know we're going to be speaking about that tragedy and the accident at length, but tell me just a little bit about your family, how many children you have.
Sure. I have 3 lovely daughters. Mm-hmm. Larisa was 13 mm-hmm. when she passed. Alina was 11, and Kira was 9. Mm-hmm. Now they're in high school. Alina's a freshman in Clarkstown South, and Kira is in middle school, mm-hmm. 6th grade. Okay. So we're very much involved with community outreach. Larisa's passion and love was to feed the homeless, get involved, volunteer, collect clothing, anything she could find. She was the person in our family that said, roll up your sleeves, we're going to feed the hungry today. Right. We were also very close-knit with our parish. Mm-hmm. They play sports for St. Francis basketball team, Clarkstown soccer team. So Larisa really traveled a lot throughout her sports, mm-hmm. but we also made a lot of family time. We did a lot of things together mm-hmm. as a family, including having supper every night together.
And I know some of this will be difficult mm-hmm. to speak about, but there's an important message that you're going to impart that will be on film now that people will be able to learn from. So let's kind of move forward to that unfortunate, really terrible accident and tragedy that you're pivoting from and trying to see some good come from it and some healing for people. And so unfortunately, your daughter Larisa was away in a family yes. vacation for a weekend.
So our family, my grandfather left us a beautiful farmhouse on 35 acres of land. It's like our home away from home. And every Memorial Day weekend, our entire family gathers together. And we just go up to the farmhouse to unplug from electronics, family time, picking berries. It's like a little house on the prairie. Right. And it was Memorial Day weekend. And my husband took Larisa and her best friend from kindergarten for a ride out for ice cream to town. Now this is like no man's land. It's like there are cows, chickens, goats crossing the road.
This is upstate New York?
Upstate in Warren County, New York. Mm-hmm. So they went out for ice cream at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Beautiful, bright, sunny day. They bought their ice cream, and on the car ride home, unfortunately, a drunk driver who was double the legal limit, he was .18 intoxicated, mixed prescription narcotics, and ran a stop sign between 40 and 50 miles per hour, and he T-boned our huge Chevy Suburban, which is built like a tank. This man lived 3 houses from the intersection that he ran through and took my daughter's life as well as his own that day. Mm-hmm. Larisa unfortunately never came back home from that ice cream outing. She came home in a body bag. We buried her in her 8th grade dance coming up that week. The shoes that she chose, she wore them into her coffin instead of to the dance that she so much looked forward to. After Larisa had passed, my husband was hanging on for dear life in the hospital. He was in the hospital, I believe, for 38 days with major health concerns, and the community of Clarkstown came to our aid as if we were family. People were dropping meals off. I would look outside and my grass was being cut. It was just an enormous outreach of how wonderful people really were, and they helped me tremendously through that time where we were grieving, going through the burial process, and taking care of my very ill husband. Mm-hmm. So I'm very grateful. And part of the foundation had started because this was an avoidable accident. It wasn't an accident, it was a fatality. This man made 5 very poor decisions that day. I go and I speak to high school students as part of the foundation, and my message is, how do your choices affect others? How did this man's choices affect me? He was drinking, he was mixing narcotics, he didn't have a current license, he had 2 prior DWIs, he did not have a current driver's license. He took someone else's vehicle that he didn't have permission to take, and he killed my daughter and himself that day, knowing that that stop sign was there. How can your choices affect others? Think before you get behind the wheel. It's not a car just to anyone. It is a machine that can do fatal damage. If you want to drink, I'm not for it. I don't believe any high school or children under the age of 21 should drink. Have a plan. Don't get behind the wheel and come out and put our civilians and people at risk. This is avoidable, and this did not have to happen. And I created this foundation based on my need to not allow Larisa to die in vain.
Let me just. I remember clearly. I was a member of the town board at the time when this accident occurred, because unfortunately, when we have tragedies of this nature, if there's a young person that dies in our community, we'll often hear about it. Usually through our police department, if there's some type of notification that's going to be made down in the community. So myself and the other members of the town board were aware of the tragedy probably just before it broke publicly, and it was horrific. And I can remember going to the funeral. My daughter Kira was a year behind, and knew your daughter, and your daughter was very well respected, and really just wonderful kid. She, involved with sports, involved with Senator Carlucci's programs, and just really a spark of life. And the butterfly that you have kind of as the logo, I'll never forget actually then attending the funeral and then the burial, and at the burial with just the monarch butterflies that seemed to just like kind of descend and actually landed on the casket,
and
landed on your shoulder. And I will never forget that. It's an image that's etched in my brain, forever. But from great tragedy, comes great pain.
Right.
And very many people can take that pain and they'll fall into a depression and all types of other issues. They can turn it into anger as you move through the stages of grief. And eventually some people will turn to the bottle, they'll turn to drugs. But for those that really try and move through this and try and make sense of something that's senseless, you try and find some good. And this foundation is really the platform for good. And I know that one of the things we've talked about is you've actually had the ability to speak to convicted felons and folks that have been arrested and prosecuted and convicted of drunk driving. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that experience.
Sure.
What was that experience like?
There's an organization called Rockland County Stop DWI, and if you're convicted of a drunk driving offense and your license is revoked or you go to prison or whatever your consequence is, part of your rehabilitation and required by a judge is to attend what's called a victim impact panel. They're 4 times a year up in Pomona. We have right here at the Stop DWI Center near High Tor Animal Hospital. And I sit along a panel and I speak to anywhere between 200 and 400 convicted drunk drivers. My message to them is never with hatred or anger, because I realize that this is an addiction, this is an epidemic. A lot of people need help desperately. Insurance companies are not always the first to come to your aid. My message to them is hope. They have another chance. They can walk away from here and never return. They don't have to lose their lives over it. And I share my story, our grief and our family, on a large screen with very intense footage. I don't hold back the victim impact panel because they're the ones that need to see her in the casket as a young lady. They need to see my husband holding her hand as she's receiving her last rites. I approach it with positive message. People are impacted by my story. Several have been in class with Larisa. Of course, we have a don't ask, don't tell policy. I'm very confidential about that. And the young adults that are sitting before me, I know them from childhood. Right. So please, make a better choice. That's what I'm asking you to do. This is every parent's worst nightmare.
Yeah, no, and it's tragic because, you know, it's something that's so avoidable. I mean, young drivers, you kind of expect, and they'll make mistakes, and you know, fender benders and things of that nature. But this moves into another realm, and again, this is a gentleman that his license had been taken away. He must have known what the consequences were, and he took his own life, and he took your daughter's life, and he impacted and shattered so many lives around your daughter.
Thank you. She's my angel guiding me from above through this foundation. It's through her keeping her memory alive, keeping and continuing her mission and helping others. Larisa was that type of child. And when I feel down in the dumps and I feel I can no longer continue this mission, I look down at my shoes, and I always wear her sneakers. And that reminds me, what would have Larisa have done? Larisa would have taken those sneakers and just kicked me in the backside and said, go out there and give your message and stop this epidemic. This doesn't have to happen. And that keeps me strong.
Oh, absolutely. Maybe let's talk a little bit about the foundation. So you have a number of events that you do coming up. So maybe we could talk a little bit about the foundation and some of the things that you're trying to bring awareness and raise money for.
Right. Well, first we have we're going to have our third annual 5K walk around Rockland Lake on May 23rd, 2018, around 6 o'clock in the afternoon. You do not have to be a runner. You don't have to be a professional walker. You can just come and see what's going on, participate. This year we're going to do something a little bit different. I would like to bring in the community more because most people who have attend this event are either runners, supporters of our family, or supporters of the senator. That's not enough. We need local vendors. We need people to come out and hear the story. We're renting tables. We're going to have music. We're going to have ice cream and hot dogs being sold. So please, if anybody's interested in Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, come set up a table, join us. The more people that attend, the more awareness that we're creating. Right.
So that's
the first one.
That's the first one, and that's right. Is that Memorial Day weekend?
That's actually May 23rd is the exact anniversary of Larisa's death, and it just so happened this year it fell on her day. But as I mentioned earlier, the 100 deadliest days of summer begins on Memorial Day weekend. I was completely unaware of that.
Right. Tell our viewers and tell me about the 100 deadliest days.
Well, again, as we went up to the farmhouse, that is the day that everyone's off from work and school. Their swimming pools are open. They have their tank tops out. It's always usually a barbecue day, fun-filled activities, outdoors. And of course, that includes alcohol. Whenever there's a barbecue or a party or people are hosting, wherever they may be, there's always alcohol included or involved somewhere. It begins on Memorial Day weekend and it ends on Labor Day. That is the highest rate of fatalities of deaths due to drunk or drug driving. You would think it would be New Year's, right? Or you think Christmas or Hanukkah or some sort of major holiday. It's the summer 100 deadliest days. So during that time is where people are casual, they're carefree, they're kind of wear their tank tops and they're in slow-mo summer mode. But that doesn't change the fact that if you consume any type of drug or alcohol that will alter your ability to drive a vehicle, you're still responsible for your actions by consuming alcohol and drinking. No judge in the county, I think, would accept that as an excuse.
Right.
Pardon me, Judge, but I was drunk because I was at a barbecue party.
Right.
So that's the 100 deadliest days.
And just raising the awareness, and you know, again, with the choices people make and how those choices impact. So you have several other events that
Yes, actually, we just an Ironman run. Everyone, I'm sure, who lives in Clarkstown has come in contact with Mr. Scott Cooper. He's a health teacher, and he's now working in Clarkstown North. He is a huge advocate for helping children and young adults make good decisions. Being a health and gym teacher, that's where he has the ability to really try to mentor them into the right direction. He is our most recent board of directors on the foundation, and he'll be doing an Ironman run in Lake Placid on July 22nd of this year.
Oh, wow.
So we will have a site shortly up on the foundation site where you can make donations, and 100% of the proceeds that will be raised are going to go to the foundation. So it's a huge blessing.
Well, that's great. And so there'll be a link on your website.
There will be a link,
Okay.
yes. As soon as it comes available. We have about 7 months, so.
Okay. And then you're also involved with Mothers Against Drunk Driving,
Yes.
and then the maybe you could speak a little bit about that as well.
Sure. As the community really well knows, Sally Boardman, she has been our leader, chapter leader of Mothers Against Drunk Driving for anywhere between 10 and 15 years. And as Sally was thinking of the future of Rockland County's Mothers Against Drunk Driving as she was transitioning into her retirement, she really didn't want to let go of the position until she found someone that was going to, she was going to pass the baton to keep the mission going. And we had met through Senator Carlucci, I believe. Somebody introduced us, and it went from there. We have the same message. We are helping victims by promoting educational programs, creating awareness. Really, awareness, it's such a simple thing. It's such a simple thing that people don't even talk about in their households with their families. So as the chapter leader now of Rockland County's Mothers Against Drunk Driving program, starting this year, I will be hosting and holding a grief group for parents who have lost their children due to drunk alcohol-related accidents, fatalities. It doesn't necessarily have to be alcohol or drugs. There are many parents that are grieving children that have overdosed on heroin and opioids. As you know better than anyone, that's becoming, that's been the latest trend. You know, kids are getting smarter. They're no longer drinking and driving.
Right.
Just clearly drinking and driving. It's usually either smoking out of a vape or taking prescription narcotics.
Right.
But I'm so blessed and lucky that I have a volunteer. His name is Officer Robert Moger. He's a drug recognition expert, which means he can tell if you are under the influence of opioids or any type of drug that causes your ability not to drive a motor vehicle. And there are only 6 in the county. He attends on volunteer hours all of my presentations when he can, when his schedule permits it. And it's a wonderful duo because I'm the grieving mother and I'm sharing as a victim how this tragedy impacted. And Officer Moger is discussing the legality of you cannot smoke a vape and get behind the car and think it's okay. Because we professionally scare children into not drinking and driving or taking drugs because it's really no laughing matter. And this can happen to anyone. And as as Mothers Against Drunk Driving, we say, this can happen to anyone. Here it was 4 o'clock, a beautiful sunny afternoon. Who thinks you're gonna send your child out for ice cream and she's never gonna come home? Nobody. Larisa doesn't even drive a vehicle.
Right.
So together, through the Clarkstown Police Department, who's been very supportive, the Sheriff's Department, the town of Clarkstown, we all have the same message. Please don't drink and drive. it can happen to anyone. My angel's gone. I'm here for your children and your grandchildren and the people of our community. We're living every parent's worst nightmare, and I would never want anyone to have to go through this terrible, terrible grief and pain. That will stay with me forever. But by channeling it into a positive direction and making an impact on others, I feel that's the best way to grieve and help.
Now, and Larisa was a wonderful child. I know here's the web address. It's www.larissastrong.org.
One S. Most people
Right.
say Larissa, but
Yeah.
it's one S.
One S. So larissa.org, and people will be able to go on to that and be able to get additional information.
Right.
I just have
Volunteers.
I just have to. We're kind of running out of time, but before we get to the end, just is there a way in which people can help this mission?
Absolutely. I'm always looking for volunteers. For example, when I go to a school district to speak to, say it's a Sweet 16 class, I come in and I set up, like a prom dress for a Sweet 16 with beautiful shoes. For this year's prom, I need volunteers. This is a Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Just a ribbon, and I need people to come and help me put them on all the cars the week before prom. Please hang these in your windshield. Remind yourself with this ribbon, you're not going to get in the car with an intoxicated driver. You will not drive. You have a plan. And hopefully this red ribbon will remind you of making a good choice and planning ahead before you begin to consume alcohol.
So volunteers and
Volunteers.
supporting the event. So
Yes.
how can they reach out to you? Is it through the website?
They can reach out to me. I have a public Facebook account. It's called Larisa Karassik Foundation. And anyone can go on it to see what the current project that we're working on, or the website, www.larissastrong.org.
Great. Anastasia, that's all the time I think we have for today.
Yes.
But it's just out of such a terrible tragedy, losing a precious young one like this, will come some good. And we're sorry for the deep pain and the undeniable and unbearable loss that you and your family had to go through. But thank you for sharing that story, as difficult as it is, and channeling that, because I do believe that you are positively impacting thousands of people and saving lives.
Thank you very much. That's our mission, our goal. Thank you.
Stay tuned for our next guest, Alan D'Agostino, the president of the Vietnam Veterans Association of Rockland County.